Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
School is back, and Dick's Sporting Goods has what you need to win your year. We've got everything from cleats to Sambas, dunks, and more. Plus, the hottest looks from Nike, Jordan, and Adidas. Find your first day fits in-store or online at dicks.com.
I think one thing that people on the outside don't really get in the game of football is you can't do everything. And it's easy from the bleachers to say, why is the defense not doing this? Well, if the kids haven't prepared to do it, we're not going to do it.
Centennial High School defensive coordinator Michael Diggins joins us in this in-season episode of our Champion Series presented by Signature Championship Rings. Centennial won their first Minnesota State Championship in 2023. We discussed the importance of player development, simplicity in play calling, and collaborative film study for effective learning. Coach Diggins highlights the role of special teams in developing younger players, adaptability in the depth chart, and the need for effective communication during games. Stay tuned for our Winning Edge takeaways following the episode.
This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year and plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the Vehicle Owner's Manual for important feature limitations and information.
We're back for another in-season episode of our Champion Series presented by Signature Championship Rings. And joining me today is the defensive coordinator at 2023 Minnesota State Champion Centennial High School, Michael Diggins. Coach, great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Coach, when we look at this time of the year, get through those first few weeks. You have your non-conference or non-district, depending on where you are around the country and how that works in the schedule. You're getting into your conference games now, but you've had those first few games, maybe a couple scrimmages. You're starting to understand your personnel. You start to see how this is all gelling together, how the different pieces fit in, who the role players are, how you might be able to expand on those. Very dynamic part of the season, but you're starting to settle into that. For you, when you think of this time of the year, what things come to mind, especially in terms of working on your defense and where you guys are at in your progression over the course of a season?
Yeah, I think it's to continue to understand that we're not where we need to be. I think understanding we need to be peaking at the right time. And we've been able to get through whole summer, get through fall camp, and then get through a few weeks. But we're still learning and we're still growing. And as a coaching staff, we're still learning about our team. And our kids are still learning how to play at a varsity level, because a lot of them are very new to this because they weren't varsity starters on last state championship team. So I think as we're kind of looking, as we're going ahead, we're going to continue to try to keep peaking at the right time and continue to develop.
So in terms of what you're able to do with you guys, obviously you want them to settle into schemes. You want to build upon things. How do you know when it's the right time maybe to start layering other things in and adding to that to make this group more dynamic in what they're able to do from week to week?
Yeah, I think it's seeing and really assessing how are the kids understanding what we're doing. How are they taking in a game plan? I think that's a very unique part about being a varsity football player, is taking how they accept a Monday scouting report and how do they progress Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday during those learning days. And then obviously going out and executing on Friday. And if they're doing those over the course of the first few weeks, I think you can continue to progress and continue to evolve off of what you're doing. But one philosophy we've always had here at Centennial is we are going to keep things as simple as possible so we can play as fast as possible. And I know every program in America says that line, but it's not always done. And it's something that we really have bought into here offensively and defensively, of just playing the game really simple so the kids can play at the highest level.
Yeah, let's start with what you just said there, taking in that game plan. And I think it's an important point, especially when we're talking about at the high school level, where, as freshmen, as sophomores playing JV, there's not a lot of game film that you're watching. You're not scouting the next opponent. I mean, you really you go out there, you might know a little bit about that program and what they run because of what they do on varsity, but you're going out there and playing ball. Whereas you get into the varsity level, it's definitely a lot more nuanced. These guys need to know more. They need to understand tendencies. They need to understand how they adjust to things much more than they did at the lower levels. So for you, looking at, okay, we've been through these first seasons, we're getting maybe into some of those more common opponents we see every single year because they're in our conference. What are you doing to make sure that, as you said, they're taking it in the right way, they're not getting overloaded, but yet at the same time, you guys are prepared to take on some complex opponents?
Yeah, I think the more we watch film with our kids, the better. And I know there's a lot of people out there today that says, with technology today, make sure you just have the kids watch film on their own and don't keep them at the school for so long. We're kind of a little bit of the opposite. On Saturday mornings after our games, we have our JV team play at 10 a.m. Our varsity will come in and we'll start preparing for next week's opponent already. We'll already start doing the kind of a little bit of the early glance at them so they can have a good idea of what they should look at during the week or the weekend. And then when it comes to Monday, we present the whole plan to them Monday morning. And I think the biggest thing for us is seeing if it transfers to the field. We can stand on a whiteboard, we can give all the great X's and O's, all the data, but if they can't transfer it to the football field, it doesn't make sense. So we need to understand as coaches, how much information can we give them? How much information can we give each specific kid? Maybe some kids don't get the same information that the rest of the defense gets because they need to keep things even more simple. And that's something that's a great challenge for us. And I'm very lucky to have a coaching staff that's really experienced and a group that's been together on defense.
What are some of the things that you feel work best when doing that? And I mean, I agree with you, and I've been studying more and more and reading about how, and boy, I'm guilty of this. I wrote a ton of articles about teaching and coaching, but at the same time, this is definitely a different type of learning. While they have all this information coming in about scheme and everything like that, when they get on the field, it really doesn't matter what you taught on the board. So you have to make that translation for you. What are some of the best practices you see in being able to, again, keep it simple enough, give them that overview, but then make sure that it's getting done out on the field?
Yeah. Again, I'm super fortunate. Of our 7 defense coaches, including myself, 6 of us are educators. So we work with kids in a classroom. We've had coaches that have coached at the college level, coordinate at the college level, coordinate at smaller schools. So we've kind of brought a lot of experience into this. And what we've really settled on is a true progression. And when you get to the film, when you get to the whiteboard, keeping everything simple. And then when we get to the field, it's not just dive in and play football. We start everything on garbage cans. Our kids laugh how much time we spend on garbage cans with, you got your 5, you got your center, guard, and tackle. And we will spend more time just lining up correctly and using your eyes correctly, and then understanding and asking the kids when we're in different looks, what are we going to see this week from here? And just starting very simple with not a lot of bodies on the field, because that's how kids learn. And then progressing into more of a smaller group setting, right? When you get into your periods of your pods and your groups and your halls, keeping it a little bit smaller before you get kind of to that grand part of practice where you're doing a team period. And I think that's been our biggest learning moment for us, is that we have really scaled back in our normal traditional team periods and really have spent more time in a smaller setting and group setting than we used to with 11-on-11 old-fashioned team style.
So moving on and thinking about personnel, and again, these guys starting to settle in. I think the other thing you start to find at this time of year is, boy, there's some of those guys you've been training up that maybe can be ready for a role. Maybe it's just a partner personnel package. Maybe it's a little bit more playing time. How are you keeping your eyes open and alert for that as a coaching staff that, all right, maybe this guy can get a little bit more time and here's how we're going to get him into the game?
Yeah, I think certain ways that you kind of get those young guys an opportunity, at least in our program, is special teams. And when we kind of see how they can play on a big stage in that time. And then the other thing is just being transparent, is experimenting. You got to try things to know things. I think that's a huge mistake we all make. We love to talk about it on a whiteboard and do these different things on a whiteboard, but then we actually never try it. And we spend a lot of time during practice still evaluating and seeing during the season. So many times programs will kind of get stuck in what they're doing at this time of year instead of continually evaluating, continually seeing what you have below, because I just think kids are always changing too, and kids are always evolving during the year, and that's how we do it. We just are going to continue to evaluate and put kids in spots that might be a little uncomfortable for them, but we have to see them in those spots. And the other thing I think we do a really good job of is our summer program that we have. We only get a few practices in the summer in Minnesota, but we really take the time to see kids in different spots. And we're just able to keep it in our back pocket if anything does happen with injuries or just somebody's just not getting the job done and we have to try something new.
Yeah, and thinking of terms of that idea, injuries, having the next guy ready, making sure that your best 11 are on the field. So sometimes that means you need that guy in the other spot. What kinds of things do you do maybe as that first 11 start to settle into their spots to maybe move the pieces around and prepare for different scenarios?
Yeah, after those, that you're kind of your varsity starters, I think when you're looking at your team periods and group periods and all that, I think making sure you're kind of that second group, that next guy in, that 3 for 2 for those 2 spots, those types of guys, they're getting equal amount of reps. So they're able to play at a high level if they're asked to. We make sure we take pride in that. And then even past that, we're going to make sure when we play a JV game, when we play a sophomore game, we're going to make sure we're putting guys in spots that could give us success this season. I see us right now in our program, we got a sophomore group that is tough as nails. And the thing that we're really making sure of is we want them in obviously in a spot that where they could be successful over the next 2 years, but we also want them in a spot where if their name's called upon this year, they're ready to go. And I think just utilizing your whole program, because we are very fortunate at Centennial. We have a lot of kids out for football. And between our 9th through 12th, we have 6 teams. We have a 9A, 9B, 10A, 10B, a JV, and a varsity. So we're able to put these kids in a lot of spots to actually play the game, to be evaluated as well.
We hit this time of the year, the first few games in. Now you have, I think, a true sample of what that opponent's going to look like. And they also have that same thing with you. So self-scout becomes very important as well. So when you're looking at those two things, looking at, okay, we have from this point on, we're going to get at least 3 of these games to watch. We know the opponent's going to watch at least 3 of our games. So how are you making sure that you're preparing for what their best stuff is, potential adjustments from them, but you yourself are not tendency prone as well, or at the very least, you know what they are so that if you need to, you can adjust?
Yeah. I think a really important thing to that is building, when you're doing your install way back when and during fall camp and summer and all that, I think developing rules that can create variety. And I think we've done a really good job of that over these last couple of years of being able to do different things, not be one-dimensional. And some weeks you're going to be. And I think the big thing is understanding that not if, but when that team kind of catches your number, what's your chess move? What's your next move that you're going to have? And you need that ready, because I think one thing that people on the outside don't really get in the game of football is you can't do everything. It's easy from the bleachers to say, why is the defense not doing this? Well, if the kids haven't prepared to do it, we're not going to do it. So I think just kind of having that plan A, plan B, plan C when you go into a week and going with it is super important, and making sure the kids understand it. Because again, if you're getting your teeth kicked in and you go to a plan B or a plan C and the kids don't know what they're doing, that's only going to get worse. So I just think having that variety and having rules that allow simplicity within that is really important.
When you look at adjustments, what takes priority for you? I guess, how do you figure out what the priority is? I mean, you can make adjustments at level 1, level 2, level 3, but sometimes you need to, I think, evaluate where's the best place for adjust, who can handle the adjustments the most. So in terms of that, how do you approach that? How do you look at being able to adjust, but make it simple and you're still executing and doing things that you're doing well? Yeah,
I think that's a really unique one. Minnesota high school football Class 6A is just extremely competitive, and the amount of offenses you see is unbelievable. One week you're going to see the full spread. One week you're going to see a single back under center, and then you're going to see a wing tee, and then you're going to see power tee. And you just see a lot of different things. So when you're doing that, you got to understand that your kids are also seeing all these different things, and it takes a lot more learning to play defense in our state. And the biggest thing with Minnesota football as well, if you don't stop the run, you don't have a chance. You got to be able to stop the run. It's a run-heavy state. And I believe that when you're looking at adjustments, everything's got to start up front. What adjustments can you make that still allows the defensive line and linebackers to play it extremely fast? Because if you start to make adjustments that confuses them and they begin to think, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So I believe keeping things really simple with the adjustments up front, because I'm a firm believer that all defenses start with the front and then work their way back.
In terms of the experience of your team too, how much of that plays a part in the guys you're counting on to, I guess, make the most adjustments, do the most things for you versus maybe where those younger guys are?
Yeah, I mean, it's 100%. It's a trust thing, right? And last year during the state championship run, we had a very veteran group, and going into games 11, 12, and 13, which is a lot of games here, and they were able to absorb and make those decisions on the fly a lot faster. So we were able to adjust a lot. And now when you look at teams that are kind of in development and still learning, you got to be really careful on how much you do, because you're going to overstimulate that brain a little bit. And like I said, we're really fortunate here at Centennial. We just got a bunch of kids that love football, love being coached, and they love to work hard at what they do. So I think that's been really helpful here, is that our kids are able to do that. And then I think one of the biggest challenges that we've found here at Centennial over these last 5 or 6 years is that we're playing two-way kids still. We're a big school, but we still play two-way kids. Not all the time, not everywhere, but that's also a huge adjustment too, because you've got to make sure that those guys, especially in-game adjustments, you got to make sure those guys are on the same page. So having a communication piece to that is really important, because I look back to what we did last year in the Prep Bowl. We had 4 or 5 kids playing two ways in the state championship. So that makes another huge high school challenge when making adjustments.
Yeah, you bring up a great point there. And I think this affects a lot of teams at the high school level who have those guys who just stay on the field. When you have a true 2-platoon team, it's great that you can get them all off the field and have them sit down and look at the iPad and here's what we're doing. Okay, we're up again. Let's go. Versus those, like you said, 4 or 5 guys, they're still out there. So how do you do that over the course of the game? Keep communication clear and make sure, hey, here's what we talked about. Here's how it's going to happen on the field when you don't really get to see those guys.
Yeah, it takes a chain of communication. It really does. And you got to be smart too. You got to think to yourself first as a coach, where are we at in the game? Can it wait till halftime? Can it wait till a true quarter change? Can it wait till a quick pause in the game that you can get a communication? Because that comes first. If it's a very simple and easy quick change, you're able to kind of tell that kid as they come to the sideline quick before staying out there or just come run over to you. You're able to, but it's not always the case. So you got to make that choice first. If it is a smaller adjustment, we got a really good system where the position coach, the kids that are playing two ways, they have to run to that position coach really quickly. Just maybe even on the numbers. Coach anything, and he gives them a thumbs up. And that's something that's really helped us on D, because we do have not a ton of two-way kids, but we just have a few kids that will come in and sprinkle some downs for us and some certain personnel packages that don't always get to come sit by the iPad. So I think that's important. And then, like I said, you got to utilize your breaks that you get. Utilize your breaks that you get. If you're a two-way kid in our program, we try to keep them off special teams. So that's another time where we can get them on the iPad really quickly as they're getting a quick drink. You're able to talk to them for about anywhere from 1 to 4 minutes, and that's really helpful as well.
Coach, I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing some of these ideas with us here as we're getting into the season and starting to settle into things. And just want to wish you and Centennial best of luck the rest of the way.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Here are winningest takeaways and ideas for implementation. 1. Pay attention to the details over the season that get your team to peak at the right time. You want your team improving steadily and peaking at the right time, especially towards the end of the season. This involves continuous learning and development, both for the coaching staff and the players as the season progresses. Use of self-scouting and continuing to develop players' understanding will pay dividends as the season progresses. And 2, have multiple plans for adjustments. Having multiple plans, A, B, and C, as Coach Diggins talked about, ready and ensuring that your players understand these adjustments is key to defensive success over the season. Being prepared for in-game adjustments without overwhelming the players can be the difference between winning and losing, especially in big games. Thank you to our sponsors for their support. Please be sure to check out all of our sponsors and their offers to our listeners. You can find those in the 10% toolkit. The link is in the show notes. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Signature Championship Rings. Signature Championship Rings is a leading designer and supplier of championship rings, serving over 10,000 teams and organizations. With a focus on quality craftsmanship, easy team ordering processes, and affordability, Signature Championship Rings celebrate every champion in their achievements, making their moments last a lifetime. For more information, visit signaturechampions.com/podcast. The link is in the show notes.